Hi everyone, it's 5 a.m. on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I'm going to call this video the attack on Los Angeles, the 9/11 attack on Los Angeles that was thwarted, but it's really the 9/11 attack on Los Angeles that I thwarted. And my point is, before you tune away, that we all have these special gifts, and any one of us can make a huge difference in the world with just little things that we do in our daily lives. And terrorist attacks also can be stopped just by small observations and behaviors that we each do. I was a young mother of a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at an airport, and this is the story of that, and also of some other visions I had after 9/11 that I never shared with anyone because they didn't make sense to me. I didn't agree with their politics. It was a vision of the opposite of what I believed at the time, what most people believed at the time. And okay, let's get started. I'm going to check my notes because I don't want to leave anything out. Okay, first of all, this jacket was given to Martin, my special effects husband, my deceased husband, the father of my children. This jacket was given to him by the battalion chief of Battalion 1 in New York. That was the battalion chief that, one of them that died in the 9/11 attack, and his remains were never found. And Martin was very close to that group because he had worked on a special effects event like that summer with David Copperfield. David Copperfield was a big magician at that time. He's probably still big. He did a show called The Tornado of Fire, and Martin worked for different magicians, and I took an oath, and he took an oath not to divulge any of his secrets. So I know how David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear, for instance. I'm never going to share that with anyone. But I think he's not even supposed to say that he worked with magicians, but I think it's pretty fair to say that there was a technical crew that created this fire tornado that David Copperfield survived. David Copperfield did it because there was a fire when he was a kid, and he always had a fear of fire, and it was a test. It wasn't really a magic trick, it was a test of his overcoming his fears. So they did this on Pier 94 in New York, and they had to have firefighters stationed all around the fire, working with David Copperfield and keeping him safe and able to put out the fire if it got out of hand. And there was like a helicopter rotor above, like with an updraft and everything. So it was probably pretty much a requirement of Pier 94 for them to have all these firefighters. So they had Battalion 1 there. And this was just, as I remember, it was just like a month or a couple months before 9/11 happened. Okay, so Martin had a busy schedule. I wanted to go back home to visit my family, which I did every year at the end of July for my Uncle Dick's birthday. We had a family reunion. It started off 5 brothers and sisters and their kids playing in the farm. It turned into hundreds and hundreds of people, but this was one of the times I went back and I visited. I was a young mother. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and Martin did not come with me. So I traveled with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old all by myself. And if anyone has had that experience, it's a real handful. You just dying to get on that plane. You just really do not want delays. You do not want to be stuck in an airport with only 3 diapers. You know what I mean? So my parents dropped me off at the Milwaukee airport. And I walked down. I don't remember why I had to go down this very long walk to get to the check-in for my bags and check in for the flight. And in those days, they didn't have any security like they do now. And it was open, and we were walking through this very crowded open area, and I was walking toward my gate, and this other guy was walking through this very crowded area, walking toward my gate, and I took a right, and he in front of me took that right. He went down the escalator, I went down the escalator. I can't recall why it was so far to the check-in area. Maybe I got dropped off in the wrong place. I don't know. But every step of the way, this guy was in front of me. Now, we had never had a terrorist attack in America from an outside entity that people were aware of. I did not have the word terrorist in my vocabulary even. I did not know this sounds crazy, but in those days, people didn't think in terms of terrorists because America was so safe. So we're walking, and this guy's in front of me, and I get this overwhelming vibe about him, that he's a bad guy. He's only 5'5", and I'm like 5'10". So it's not stature that intimidated me, but he's walking in front of me. His leather jacket was skin-colored, flesh-colored. And I got this creepy feeling like this guy is really bad. He's a murderer. He's worse than a murderer. I couldn't think of a word for it. He's like a murderer of a lot of people. But I didn't have the word terrorist in my vocabulary, and I'm walking behind him feeling this intense feeling. Now, when I first had my children is when my psychic skills really blossomed. So this was really intense. And I'm like, holy crap, should I tell somebody? I just felt like this really bad vibe, so I sort of stayed back. Well, he went around and he got in the line that it turned out I had to get into. And there was no one else between us, and I ended up getting in line behind him. The airline, I believe, was Northwest at that time, that I would always take from Milwaukee to LA. Southwest wasn't really doing that route at that time, and Northwest was the big airline. So I'm in line behind him. I have a 1-year-old sleeping in my stroller, I believe, and a 3-year-old that's a little antsy, Michael, and my bags. And I'm like negotiating all this stuff. And this guy, I failed to mention, when I'm walking behind him and I got this overwhelming vibe, he turned around and looked at me and smiled, and I believe he said something like, hey, or hi, or whatever. Or he might have just looked at me, but how did he even feel me behind him to turn around and look at me like that, That creeped me out. So then I'm in line, and I'm just like, I'm going to stay away from this guy. So everyone else is 5 feet apart, sort of working their way through the line. I stayed like 10 feet back. I'm like, I'm going to protect my kids. And all I could think is, I should not get on a flight with this guy. I don't want to be on the same plane as this guy. Something bad's going to happen, So I'm looking around thinking, should I tell the security guard? The security guard was over in the corner. And I ran through all the possible conversations I could have with this guy in my head. And I thought, this sounds insane. What am I going to tell the guy? This is a murderer. I'm a psychic, Or this guy is planning something bad. How do I know? What evidence do I have? They would take me off the flight or punish me, but they wouldn't do anything to the guy, right? Oh, I failed to mention he was sort of an Arab descent. Now, I've told the story over and over again to many friends and family, and of course they always say, well, are you a racist? No, and at that time, I don't even think people thought of terrorists as being Arab. I don't know. That had nothing to do with it. It was a vibe. It had nothing to do with it. He was good looking, actually, but he was very short. And he was businesslike. When he spoke, he had good English. He seemed like a Milwaukee resident, but sort of Arab. He didn't really seem like a Milwaukee resident, but he seemed like he could function well in America, pass himself off as average. So I decided, okay, I can't talk to the security guard about this. It's not going to make any sense, and they won't do anything unless they do something to me. And I really want to get home with my kids. My husband's waiting for me. And the kids can't tolerate being stuck in an airport. The next flight would be 12 hours later. So I decided, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen and see if he's on my flight or not. And if he's on my flight, I'm definitely not getting on that flight. And I'm just going to tell my parents that that I missed it or something, because my parents would never understand. This is a trauma I have as a psychic, is I can't even tell my own family because they wouldn't get it. And still, they don't get it. I mean, I can even imagine my brother hearing this video and thinking, a terrorist attack that you stopped. Obviously, you want attention. Obviously, you're deluded, right? So I made that decision. Absolutely, I'm not getting on the flight with this guy. And if I get on the plane, I'm going to look around and see if he's on there, and I'm going to get off. I'm just going to make up I'll leave my luggage if I have to. I don't care. So that was my decision. I'm standing back, holding back my children. They want to move forward, and I'm holding them back because I don't want to get anywhere near this man. And he turns around and he looks at us. And it's not common for people in line to turn around and look behind them at the person behind them like that. Just a side note, he had no luggage. I didn't use that logical deduction in deciding that he was a terrorist, which I didn't have the word for. In retrospect, I'm thinking, okay, why didn't he have luggage? And also, I found out why he was on this flight. In the articles and the research that came out after 9/11, which is now buried under mountains of 9/11 articles, which everyone seems to write because they all want their content seen, right? Or whatever. But immediately after 9/11, I found an article about how these terrorists had been planning to strike LA. They decided not to do it. But they cased all these airports in the Midwest trying to figure out where would be the best way to get on a plane headed for LA. And I believe they picked Milwaukee because it's a small town with very low security. Everyone's so friendly, you know. But I think what might have happened is this guy saw me knowing. It was like in line we had a communication. I tried not even to look him in the eye. I felt like I should be, subservient and respectful, so I don't piss him off. So I'm just looking down. He looks back at me, and I feel this feeling like, okay, and he just gets out of line and leaves. And I think he might have thought, I don't think he thought I recognized him, because I don't think he was a famous person as far as a terrorist goes, but I think he either decided we were recognizing what he was, and that his task in flying out of the city to strike LA was not going to work out because people were going to identify what he was and put a stop to it somehow, or he thought I recognized him. But he just got out, inexplicably just got out of line. Who does that? Why would that happen unless what I'm describing is actually what happened? So I went ahead and got on the flight. I looked around. I didn't see anybody on there that looked anything like him. We flew home, uneventful. Nothing happened. And this was at the end of July. It was whatever that weekend was after July 25th. It would have been, maybe like August 1 or something. 1 month later is when 9/11 happened. I didn't really connect the dots until I started hearing that these terrorists had trained in other cities. And then it was like within 24 hours. And I realized, oh my God, this was one of them. I know this is one of them. I don't know what to do, right? Because I have all these psychic visions. I don't know what to do with them. And this is relevant information. So I'm like, I'm going to sound like a kook, but I'm going to call the CIA or the FBI. I can't remember if it was the FBI or CIA I called. I think it was the FBI I called. Called the FBI. I told them what had happened in a very short version. The operator immediately says, okay, thank you. We already have all the terrorists. We already caught them all. We know who they all were. Well, my gut instinct is they didn't. They didn't catch them all. And this guy was not a suicide terrorist. This guy was like a planner. This guy was like a authority, a controller, a boss. But they didn't want to listen to me because I was a kook calling them with one of many tips, right? They probably had thousands of tips. So then I told the story, anguished, what do I do with it, right? Told the story to a couple friends over time. And then it was about 3 months later, I think, one of the friends said, "Oh, did you know they were training in Wisconsin?" And they pointed out this whole thing again about how they were training in the Midwest. They were going to take an airplane from the Midwest and hit Los Angeles. And they were casing airports, trying to figure out what would be a good airport to fly out of. I found an art. I'm like, I can't believe it. And they showed me, they told me, look it up in Google. So I Googled it, and I found an article about how the terrorists were training in Wisconsin at they had some base there, and they had, I don't think they were doing flying training there, unless it was early, because they have smaller planes. Wisconsin is known for the Oshkosh fly-in, and I don't know why they were training there. And the article said that they were looking for places to fly out of to hit LA. So I got really excited about that I had been validated in my vision, and that this was what really happened. And I tried to print the article about a month after that, and it had already been withdrawn. I couldn't find it anywhere. They had taken it off the internet. I don't know why that happened. I'm still trying to figure that out. I mean, I could see him retracting an article that was incorrect. That's very strange why the article back then would just disappear off the internet. And I don't have a solution for it. So I looked at all the pictures of the terrorists that were posted, the 19 terrorists, and I really don't think this guy is one of these terrorists. It might be the guy with the glasses, or it might be, I found this other 20th terrorist. He really didn't look like these guys. He was good looking, he was businesslike, he was clean shaven, completely. Okay, so what do I do with this intense experience? I'm a writer. I'm a screenwriter. I decided I was going to write a screenplay about a woman who has all these visions and sees things going to happen, tries to warn people, nobody believes her. I called it the Cassandra syndrome. And honestly, a lot of people might think I have a wild imagination because I'm a writer, but honestly, I write because I have things that are happening in my life that I want to process. So writing is like therapy. And also I've always wanted to be a writer, but decided I'm going to write this screenplay. I had a dream. What happens in the dream is somebody tampers with an airplane, and this woman warns the FBI or the CIA. I think it was the FBI I called, but I should have called the CIA. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I called the FBI because I remember looking up the number. So I go to bed and I have a dream about my screenplay, which is sometimes how my creative mind works, but sometimes it's a message. So I had a dream that the President of the United States had directed this terrorist to mess with this airplane. Well, at the time, I know there's like a conspiracy theory now about President Bush wanting a war on oil. So many people coming out saying, oh, I was against the war in Iraq. I already knew that this was wrong. That's bullshit. At the time of the 9/11 attacks, the entire United States was 100% behind invading Iraq and getting the terrorists, right? I'm saying right, but it's right. Everyone was on board. I don't know if we had bad information. I'm not really knowledgeable about conspiracy theories about this or history. I just know that in my dream, the president was behind it, and politically, in real life, I thought that's ridiculous. But that was a dream I had, and I thought, well, this might make a good story, so I'll keep it in, right? So I'm writing the story. Bad guys tamper with the plane, they're gonna do a terrorist action, they do it. The president's behind it. This woman reports it to the FBI, and there is this secret camp where they take people who have psychic ability and they train them. The woman gets abducted by the FBI and taken to the camp, even though she has a baby at home, and they indoctrinate her in these techniques, which I dreamed all the specific techniques they used to bring out the psychic ability in this woman. some of them kind of torture. And she gets trained, and she's now a weapon and a possession of the FBI or CIA, whatever it is. So I'm like, this is really good. This is a good story. But I need an ending, right? And in the end, she's got to escape from this evil entity that's trapped her into this lifestyle, because she just wants to be a mom, and they're using her, and they're not necessarily good guys, right? Go to sleep. Have an insight, a dream about how it ends. And what she does is she defects, she runs away. They can track her because she's sending off these signals, these psychic signals, and they're after her. But she decides the way out of it is to turn into a sender and send the world the message that the president was behind this the whole time. And it pops into the consciousness of all the people in America, and it becomes moot trying to get her back because now the program's shut down or whatever. Something like that. So now, in real life, there's all these conspiracy theories. There's all this people saying George Bush was behind this. I don't know if George Bush was behind it. I thought he was a good guy and that what he did was right, but who knows? So it seems almost like having the dream created the scenario where the vibe has been spread to all of America, and everybody in America does think this is questionable, and maybe that America was a bad guy involved in 9/11. Don't know what the truth is. But I did find out later that CIA school the FBI school. I don't know if it's FBI or CIA. That school exists. I don't know if that they torture people, but it's come out later that the school for psychics, the training facility, did exist. That's been declassified. At the time, back in 9/11, this was not acknowledged. This was denied that this thing existed. And, I tried to do a little research back then because I kind of thought I want to volunteer for whatever this thing is. But it's hard for people to believe these days that we didn't know this stuff then, but we did not know this stuff then, that the CIA school existed. So I was conflicted. I was so conflicted because I really liked George Bush. I really believed in fighting the terrorists, and I had these dreams that made no sense to me whatsoever, So I did not share that with anybody, that part, because I just thought, this is wrong. I don't want to support this. I don't want to spread this rumor. But that's not the best part. I had another insight, and this is really weird. I was a terrorist, quote unquote, in this foreign land. I belonged there. I was escaping from these very bad people that were in suits. So that's my symbolism for the CIA. I was trying to avoid them. They were in the wrong. I fully believed I was in the right. I was running to escape from them. They were trying to catch me. I was a leader. And I was going over a very rocky terrain, mountains. I climbed a mountain to get up over the mountain into another country. This dream I had months before they found out that Osama bin Laden had climbed over the mountains into Afghanistan, and they were looking for him in Iraq. Or was it Iran? Iran. I'm not saying Osama bin Laden is a good guy, but I was seeing the world through his eyes. I was a good guy. I believed in what I was doing. And I saw that he went over the mountains in this other country. I had no one to tell. But months later, comes out that when I had that dream was actually when he went over the mountains into the other country. I even dreamed that I was going to go stay in this cave, which is where they found him. So what I saw was not necessarily correct factually, but it was the feelings, the beliefs of the person I was seeing. My takeaway from all of the story is that any one person can change events by just picking up what's going on around them and interacting with people. I know I had a two-way connection with that terrorist in the line. If they decided not to attack because they maybe had one little instance too many of people looking at them funny. Probably they didn't want to attack LA because LA is so spread out. It's very hard to find a target. I know what targets I would hit, but probably shouldn't say. But I'd hit the port and the water supply, because LA only has like 17 skyscrapers in a little cluster, and that's the only downtown we have. We don't have an iconic tall tower. There might have been many reasons. You know, it's a long way to go to LA. They'll be done bombing everybody in New York by the time they get to LA. It's possible they had someone on a flight planning to hit LA that was grounded when they grounded all the planes. Nonetheless, it's like the butterfly effect. A little thing you do here or there affects many, many things in the future as more people interact in it and it goes out into the world. I believe we all have the psychic ability that I have. Just need to listen. Don't even need training. Just need to listen to it. If you are in a situation where you have a bad vibe, would you get out of line of a airplane line when you got your husband waiting for you, your little 1-year-old and your 3-year-old? Would you get out of that line and not go on that flight and lose your money for the airplane ticket? You know, acting on your convictions, and over time my convictions have gotten stronger, because when you get a psychic vibe and you actually act on it, it gives you more confidence for the next time. So we can all stop terrorism in America by being observant, by being true to our instincts. And that's the message I wanted to leave you with this video. I think it's important that I send it. I don't know why, but 3 in the morning I woke up and I had this really strong message that I have to share this. So here it is. Thanks.